I'm going to go ahead and get started. So just a little bit of an overview for today. We're going to just talk about a few things with regards to movement and physical activity, exercise in our lives, particularly as people who are struggling maybe with feeling stressed out or burnt out, feeling overwhelmed with everything that we need to do. And how do we approach physical activity from this perspective? How it relates to our rest and recovery and resilience. And then we're going to spend a couple of minutes, around 15 to 20 minutes, doing a little bit of movement. It's not going to be anything crazy. And obviously, if there's something that is a bit much for you, or you have pain in a particular area and a movement is not great for you, you can feel free to skip that, and you can even just watch if you'd like to do that. So it's not going to be anything really intense or advanced or anything like that. It's going to be more with perspective of recovery. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for your replies on the poll that I did. So it was just, don't stress if you haven't answered that, by the way, but it was just a poll that I did, just asking, you know, how does physical activity show up in your life? Do you have high levels of it? Is it varied? Is it consistent? All that kind of stuff. And we're just going to get started with a different rating system, just because I want to workshop a few things with regards to movement. And I just wanted to pick a bit of a simpler way of rating our physical activity for this purpose. So you can write your answers in the chat. You can write them on paper if you're not comfortable sharing them in the chat. Whatever feels comfortable for you, you can answer them mentally as well. So we're going to start with I think I've said we're going to start a few times. We're going to rate our physical activity just purely based on level. So if I had to ask you, what is the level of your physical activity from 0 to 10? And you just pick the number. If it helps you when you're picking a number to add like a comment or caveat to that or whatever, sometimes we like mentally spin out like, oh, but it's a 7 because of this, but an 8 because of this, and it's a 4 because of this. If you want to put any like details that helps you just pick a number, go for it. This whole process is about just gathering some information. It's not about getting anything right or wrong. We're not judging ourselves or each other for this, and we're also just noticing, right? That's another form of information. When we notice that we're judging ourselves for something that we said, or we're judging someone else when they put a specific number, etc. So that's the first question. Just on a scale between 0 and 10, how physically active are you? What is your level of physical activity? Okay, and then once you've got that number, I want to explore that a little bit. So the first thing that I want you to explore is, where did you go mentally in order to answer that question? Like, what did you fetch from your brain in order to give that a number? Was it your daily activity? Was it your official workouts? Was it your sport? And we just want to notice that, again, it's information, right? And it tells us a lot about what we believe and think about physical activity, what we believe counts. As Lauren said, does running after my kids the whole day count? So that's what we want to notice, right? Where's our brain going to say, like, this is physical activity, this is not physical activity, or you didn't even like think about that? Like, a few examples might be, let's say someone is during the day kind of on a continual basis very active. So they're just kind of constantly doing things, running after the kids, doing laundry, or you know, moving from one room to the other, or for example, seeing patients. If you don't have seated work, you can like kind of constantly busy during the day. But maybe you never officially work out, like you don't go and do a sport, or you don't go to the gym or whatever. So one person might look at that situation and say, I am so active, like the whole day I'm just on the go, I never stop. So I'm quite active or very active. Another person might be in the exact same situation and say, I am not active at all. I never go and work out. I never play sport, whatever. So you can see how the same situation, people will rate their physical activity differently based on what they think counts as physical activity. On the other end of that, it could be a situation where someone officially works out like for a few hours per week, right? Like let's say they go to the gym for an hour every single day. One person might look at their situation like that and say, I am so active, like I work out every single day for an hour. I'm incredibly active. Someone else might look at the exact same situation and say, I'm not active at all. Like, yes, I go to the gym like for an hour of my day, but if I compare an hour with the rest of my day, I'm just sitting at my desk. I'm very sedentary. So just getting an idea of your own thoughts and beliefs of like what counts, what doesn't count, what is physical activity, like what, let's define it, what is it even? So that's the first thing we want to look at. And then the second question has two parts to it. So the first part is, would you like your number to be different? Or let's say, let's make it easy and say, what would you like your number to be? So what is the number that you actually want? And then the second part of that question is why. So again, you can comment in the comment box or on your own piece of paper, and whatever feels good for you. But what would you like your number to be? And then explore the reason that you would want your number to be that. Okay. And then what we're going to explore with this number is the first thing I want you to notice is whether or not you made the assumption that the second number had to be higher than the first number, right? So if you're immediately going to, oh, it should be more. And maybe you genuinely want to be more physically active. Maybe you want the number to be higher, etc. But it's more noticing whether that was just assumed. Like it can't be the same as my first number, and it definitely can't be lower than my first number. Was that assumption it had to be higher? Because that's what our brain often tends to do, right? We often discount what we're already doing or where we are, and we sort of assume that we always need to be growing, always need to be doing more, always need to be optimizing. So that's the first thing. Just notice that assumption and whether it is higher or whether you actually made it lower, whether it stayed the same, etc. And then again, a similar thing like with your why. Where did you get that information from? Where did you go mentally to answer the question of why? And another way of asking this might be, what purpose does exercise serve in your life? What is it for? What function does it serve? What is it a tool for? Is it because you want to be healthier? Is it because you want to be able to do more? Is it because you feel like you should? Or is it because you think it's necessary to lose weight? Or do you think that, what else? You have longevity goals. Maybe you want to do more because you have a performance goal. In the other direction, maybe you put it lower because you said, I'm spending so much time with physical activity and there's so many other things on my plate, I'm actually going to cut it down a little bit. Or maybe I'm being a bit obsessive, a bit perfectionistic about my exercise, I'm actually going to turn it down a little bit. So what is the purpose of exercise for you? Why did you pick the second number? So any reflections regarding that, you're also welcome to put in the chat or just journal a little about it. little bit about it. Okay, so hopefully you've got a little bit of an idea of like where you are with physical activity, where you want to be, and then some of your thoughts and beliefs about what counts as physical activity, what is physical activity, and why we have it, what is the purpose of it, what is it in our lives for. And just noticing that stuff. Again, no judgment, there's no right or wrong to this. It's gathering information about how does your brain work. Okay. So part of what I wanted to explore in this, in these scales, is when we are, when we have tendencies towards being quite idealistic or perfectionistic, you know, hard work, do more, try harder, optimize everything. We tend to just, as I was alluding to with the second number, we tend to think like, oh, it must always be more. We must always be adding. We must always do more. We must always try harder. And I want to just offer the idea that what's optimal for you right now might be different to what's optimal for someone who is, let's say, having a performance goal or a longevity goal, or whatever it is, looking for optimal health. What is optimal for you, especially if you're in this group, you are likely struggling with things like feeling burnt out, feeling stressed out, feeling overwhelmed, feeling exhausted. All right. And we want to use physical activity as a tool for helping you where you are right now. So meeting you where you are and helping you on this journey forward. Instead of what is the optimal amount of physical activity, what is the optimal type, what is the optimal everything, and like I need to get there. So one way that I like to think about this is we, let's say, imagine like flat ground, and this is a mountain we want to climb. And that mountain might be optimal health, it might be longevity, it might be overcoming a certain or navigating a certain kind of like chronic illness or something, or overcoming chronic pain. What else could it be? I say performance. Yes, I think it did. Anyway, so we might have this mountain that we want to climb. And when you are burnt out and stressed and overwhelmed, you are not necessarily on flat ground, or as some of us are approaching it as, we're not already like halfway up the mountain and we just need to try harder and get higher and all that. Sometimes we are in a bit of a hole, a little bit of a ditch. And when you're in a hole, just adding more energy, trying harder, trying to get out of that hole, it just makes you more exhausted and more stressed out. And if you get to a certain point in that hole and you don't have energy anymore, you just kind of fall back to that original point in the hole. So I try to think of it as like every time we are adding something that's helping us, something that's supporting us, something that is beneficial for where we are, we're adding like almost from the bottom up, we're adding more soil into that hole, so that we are just going further and further up into that kind of level ground. And maybe then when you're at that point, you can decide to climb that mountain, right? But that's not where you are right now. And it's a similar thing with patients, right? If you have a patient who, let's say, just want to use a different example to physical activity. Let's say nutrition-wise, this person is like, everything they're eating is just basically junk. And you are trying to get them from here to, no, but this is the optimal way to eat. If you try and just directly go from where they are to optimal eating, the chances of them actually getting there are pretty small, because it just becomes overwhelming. They don't have the skills to get there. They don't have the kind of mindset or the thoughts around it to get themselves there. They don't have the support structures to get themselves there, whatever it is that's kind of stopping them from getting there. If we're just trying to push them towards that optimal all the time, they actually probably have less of a chance that they're actually going to get there. Whereas when we meet the patient where they are and we say, what is the next step? How can we just get you a little bit healthier? How can we get you eating just a little bit better? How can we substitute this out for that or whatever it is? But we're not trying to jump from this place to that place. And that's often what we try and do with physical activity as well. So yes, we want to think about it as like we're using physical activity as a tool to help us where we find ourselves. So meeting ourselves where we are. So a few examples of this might be if you are exhausted and burnt out, you're feeling overwhelmed, you probably don't need more physical activity that's taking a lot of time or completely draining you, or just adding another thing to your plate when you're already feeling maxed out. You might need something that is just kind of sprinkling it in throughout your day. You might need something that is helping you gain some energy, but it's not completely draining you. Or you're getting you moving, but you're not completely exhausted after that. If you're very stressed out, if you're feeling anxious, if you're in sympathetic dominance, you probably don't need more physical activity that is high heart rate, high intensity, very demanding, putting you more into sympathetic dominance. You probably need activities that are more going to slow down your heart rate. They're more kind of recovery based, shifting you towards parasympathetic dominance, etc. Keep in mind, we can also just add those as recovery. So if you do something that you absolutely love and it serves a different purpose, right? It's bringing you joy, maybe it's bringing you alone time, maybe it's time that you just, don't have to look after anybody else, whatever it is. And that happens to be kind of high intensity or whatever it is, or any of these things that we're going to be kind of talking about. If it happens to be not exactly what would be optimal, but it's optimal in a different kind of way, you can just add recovery to the end, right? So thinking of like what we need for where we are. Another thing is like being mentally or emotionally very drained. You probably don't need another form of physical activity that is mentally very complex, that you really have to think about what you're doing the whole time. It takes precision, takes perfection, or that's emotionally draining, right? You are constantly thinking about like winning, or that this has to go right. There's a lot of pressure on it, whatever it is. And then, for example, if you are not sleeping very well, or you want to improve your sleep because you're quite exhausted, you probably don't need physical activity that is disrupting your circadian rhythm, or that is not being optimized to help you sleep. You need things that are, a little bit more waking you up when it's early on in the day, and then getting you kind of relaxed and slowing down towards the end of the day, 3 or more hours before you go to bed, whatever it is. Depending on the physical activity, you can adjust it in different ways. But think about that. Like if you can use it as a tool to get better sleep. Same thing as like if you think of, like, again, going back to the why, if you think of it as like something I should do, I should look a different way, so that's why I have to do more physical activity. You probably don't need more physical activity that is going to reinforce those kinds of things, right? I just have to do it, even though it's like terrible and I don't enjoy it and I don't want to do it. Or I have to do stuff that's based on weight loss because I have to look differently, or I have to do things that are based on like getting six-pack or whatever it is, like whatever you think your body should, however your body should look differently. You probably don't need more activity that's just going to reinforce those same things. So it's just a way to start thinking about what do I currently think that exercise is for, as we explored in the second question or the second scale. And then now trying to look at it as if I was looking at it as a tool to help me feel less burnt out, less overwhelmed, less unhappy, less anxious, less mentally or emotionally drained. Maybe I'm using it to help me sleep better. If I was using it as a tool to help me where I am right now, how might I either change the activity itself or add recovery or change the amount of it, etc. So that was that on kind of reflecting on physical activity and how it relates to more to rest and recovery and that kind of thing. And I want to get now a little bit more into the practical aspect. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about heart rate. Sheesh, am I talking today? Heart rate zone 2 training. And then we're going to do a bit of a movement session. Feel free to type in anything that this kind of process is bringing out or that you're thinking about, any questions that you might have, experiences that you've had. Okay. So I just wanted to chat a little bit first about zone 2 training. So I made a post about this and I will repost in the comments the calculations again. But the point of zone 2 training is essentially if you want to be using something that is going to be increasing the capacity of your, let's say, increasing aerobic capacity. So you can do more, meaning you have more energy, you're less likely to feel exhausted, you're less likely to feel stressed. It's a very parasympathetic dominant state. It's not very like mentally draining. So it's kind of a way to get some physical activity that is going to increase your aerobic capacity without being after that completely drained or exhausted or mentally drained, etc. So the zone 2 heart rate calculations, we want to be calculating what the maximum heart rate is that we're going to be training at. So I'm just going to go through a little bit of that detail. If you don't have anything that tracks your heart rate, don't worry about this. I'll chat about the other way to do it just on feel. But for those of you who do have a watch or something, or phone or whatever, something that tracks your heart rate, you can use this. None of it is like a very technical, like you're going to be sure that this is heart rate zone 2, but it's just to get you some sense. So we want to take 180 minus our age. So I'll just give you a few minutes to calculate that, depending on your mental math / access to a calculator. So 180 minus your age and get that number. And then there's a few things that you want to, a few considerations that you want to tweak the number for. So if you have a particular kind of illness, that can include burnout, right? So if you are feeling burnt out, or you have an illness, or you have like a chronic sort of pain or that kind of thing, an injury, or you have not been training for a very long time, you can subtract 10 from that number that you got. And if you have been training quite consistently for about 2 years and you haven't had many issues in terms of injuries or illnesses and that kind of thing, you can add 5 to your calculation. So just a little bit of a tweak. based on that, and there'll be more detail in the thing that I'll post in the comments. And this is called the MAF calculation, MAF formula. And this number that we've got is the max heart rate that we want to be training at for this type of activity. But we also don't want it to be too low, right? So we want to be round about this heart rate and slightly lower, but we don't want to be very low. So we want to get some sort of activity, a little bit of a challenge going, but we don't want to go above this heart rate, because that's when we start to get into anaerobic. As a search for that word, anaerobic activity. So that's the way to do it with your heart rate. And then if you don't have something that tracks your heart rate, or you just don't want to use that, you can use your perceived rate of exertion. So you can use the feeling that you could carry out a conversation, but it's not necessarily comfortable. So it's not like really easy, relaxed exercise. You still are getting the heart rate going a little bit, but you could still carry out a conversation if you had to. Some people put it as like, you can carry out a conversation, but you don't really want to. Or let's say you were on the phone and you were running or cycling or whatever, or walking. The person on the other side of the phone would not be able, you would not be able to hide it from them that you're doing exercise. So it's not that chill, but you can still have a conversation with them. So that's around the kind of level of exertion that we want. I find it corresponds quite nicely to when I can still breathe in and out only from my nose while running. But that might be different for different people. So we want to start kind of adding in a little bit of time at this, around about this heart rate, to start doing our zone 2 training. The other zone, heart rate zone training that we often do is like more maximum heart rate, maximum efficiency, or maximum capacity, but that I probably would add at a later point, and it's not as important for people who are exhausted and stressed out, burnt out. You don't really need that right now. But it is, if you would like to know more about that, we can always do a session on that. And yeah, let's do some movements. So again, this is related to rest and recovery. We're going to do a little bit of breathing. We're going to go through some of the concepts of recovery-based movement, and you can kind of put this into your day wherever it's relevant. So some of it is breathing in order to kind of relax you. Some of it is breathing while you're moving, that you get used to that feeling of breathing while you're moving and not just holding your breath. People who are familiar with yoga and Pilates will be quite used to that. And then just getting very kind of present physically. And then if something is more intense, if we do a bit more intense movement, how do we recover after that? Okay, cool. So so we're just going to start seated. And I just want you to start, I'm just going to keep my eyes open looking at my notes, but you're welcome to close your eyes. And we just want to start with kind of an awareness of our body. So we just want to get a little bit more kind of present in the body. We want to kind of notice what it feels like to breathe. We want to notice if there's any areas of our body that we're kind of holding a bit of tension, or where your mind is going to, what kind of thoughts you might be having. So we're just going to kind of scan through the whole body. So think of just having a little scanner going through your mind, your eyes, your nose, your mouth, going kind of from top to bottom, your neck, your shoulders, your torso, your arms, noticing if there's any point that you're kind of holding on a little bit. You can relax anything that feels like it's holding on to a bit of tension. Abdomen, legs, knees, calves, feet. And you're welcome to do it the other way as well. You're welcome to go from inside to outside. But we're just trying to get a little bit more in our bodies, noticing what's going on in our bodies. And the second thing I want you to notice is your breathing. So just notice your breathing. You don't need to change anything for now. Just notice how you're breathing. Where you feel you're breathing the most. Is it the chest? Is it at your nose? Is it at your mouth? Is it at your abdomen? And whether your eyes are open or closed, it doesn't matter. You can do this with eyes closed as well, but you're just going to almost think of your view widening. So this is a way of reducing the physiological activation, and it's something you can use for stress release, but just thinking of, instead of like, you can think of how you would be if you were focusing on a task. You're very kind of activated, you focus, you zoning in. We want to do the opposite. We're kind of softening our view, we're widening it up, we're taking in like the peripheral view. And then we're going to start to just kind of shift our breathing a little bit. One of the concepts that people will often talk about is taking deep breaths. So when you're feeling stressed, take deep breaths, take deep breaths. If you deepen your inhale, if you're constantly trying to breathe in more, you're going to just increase your heart rate. So instead of taking a deep breath, think more about extending your breathing. So especially your exhale getting longer. So you can think about kind of breathing in for 4 counts and then breathing out for 6 to 8 counts. But you're just trying to make your exhale longer than your inhale. Just do that a few times, breathing in for 4. And then 2 other breathing techniques that we can go through. One is box breathing. So this is a similar kind of, it's like relaxing your body, but you can think of a box. So you're breathing in for the same amount of counts that you're holding for, breathing out for the same amount of counts, and then holding again. So you can choose what feels comfortable in terms of how long that is, and that might progress as you go. But let's say for 3 or 4 breaths in, hold for 3 or 4, breathe out for the same amount, and then hold again at the bottom. So you're thinking of a box. Hold, breathing out, and then hold again. The third way that you can use breathing to activate your more parasympathetic aspect of your nervous system is the physiological sigh from Andrew Huberman. So we want to take an inhale, and then at the top of that inhale, think of taking just an extra little sip of air, and then slowly exhaling. You can also add like an audible sound to your breathing out. It just helps to relax you even more. So breathing in, add a little extra sip of air at the top, and then slowly breathe out. And the last thing we're going to do, seated, thinking about relaxing your body. When people do kind of somatic-based movements, they try and use movements of the body to access certain states. So if we're trying to access a state of relaxation, a little bit of like looseness in the body, no tension, we want to be doing flowy movements. So you can do something like dancing to something, but you just want to let your body kind of flow a little bit more instead of kind of rigid, like straight up and down, like very specific movements. You want to have it a little bit more flowy. You can feel when you kind of flow your body, you immediately start to relax a little bit more. Same thing with shaking out body parts, shaking out. You can do it with your feet. and things like wiggling, anything that's kind of shaking or wiggling or like moving, flowing, you can immediately feel that the body tends to relax with those types of movements. So you can use that as like a body-based way of creating a more relaxed state in your nervous system. So then we're going to do some things standing. I'm just going to move my screen. Okay, so we're going to do some things. I hope you can still hear me properly. So we're going to do a few movements that are more flowy and kind of timing your breathing with that movement. And then also some movements that are more neurologically kind of activating, and then realizing, kind of being aware that that's happening, and then afterwards doing a few recovery movements, flowing, shaking, whatever you need to recover from that. So some of these movements, the more kind of neurologically activating, we call them CARs, or controlled articular rotations. So they are just controlled movements of the joints in a full range of motion. For the health of your joints, I will also post the full routine of this, because we're not going to go through all of it. But let's start with the neck. Please adapt this to whether you're feeling pain or whether this is uncomfortable for you, or if you just have not done this in a long time, just start small and you can always build up. So with CARs, we want to be physiologically activating the rest of the body. So we're tensing up the body, we're tensing up the arms so that only the neck is moving. We want to start with slowly looking down towards the floor and then slowly rotating to one side. When you can't rotate anymore, you're going to laterally flex. So bring your ear towards the floor, towards your shoulder. You're going to look up to the ceiling as far as you can. Think of lengthening through the neck so that you're not kind of collapsing into the back of your neck. Take your left ear to the floor, to your shoulder. I think of kind of pouring water out of that ear backwards. And then turn to rotate towards that side. And then slowly, as if you're drawing a line at your collarbone, back to the center. And we're going to go the other way. So slowly going to the left, whichever other way you can go. Laterally flexing, dipping water out of that ear, going into extension. Think of lengthening through the neck. Laterally flexing to the other side, rotating to the other side, and slowly back. We're just going to move straight into the scapular CARs. So going up as far as you can with the scapula, going backwards as far as you can. Think of drawing down as far as you can, and then forward. So we're doing a whole circular movement with the shoulder blades and really kind of activating in every direction. Doing two in one direction and then reverse. So going backwards first, going as high as you can, squeezing all the tissue in every direction that you can. So you're trying to make it active. And just noticing now that you're quite neurologically activated. These movements are designed to kind of be like that. So getting a little bit of a shake, wiggle, doing a bit of flowing kind of movements. We're going to do for the spine. There are other positions to do this, but we're just going to do the standing one. So holding onto both shoulders. We're going to slowly curl down into flexion, slowly moving into rotation, similar to the neck ones. Then laterally flexing, thinking of going upwards, chest towards the ceiling, laterally flexing to the opposite side, rotating to the opposite side, slowly forward. We're just going to do one in each direction. So now we're going to the other side, first rotating, laterally flexing, extending, and laterally flexing to the other side, rotating to that side, and slowly back down. Okay. The last ones we're going to do are for the hips. So we're going to slowly take the hip into flexion. You're welcome to hold on to something for a little bit of balance so that you can really focus on the joint movement itself. And then slowly take it out into abduction. Slowly tip the knee down and take the foot upwards. So we're going to internal rotation. You're trying to move the rest of your body as little as possible. Take it back into extension and then slowly bring it back to neutral. I'm going to bring this down a little bit. We're going to reverse. So we're going into extension, coming back around into external rotation. Ooh, falling over. You might feel yourself cramping. That's fine. You bring it into external rotation, bring it into flexion, and slowly back down. One on the other side. You can start this in neutral, or you can start it already in external rotation. So we're going to start bringing it up into flexion. Please don't worry about doing this perfectly right now. We are just going through a few of these more so that you can feel the awareness of this neurological activation, and you can get the routine later. Notice if you bring your shoulders up to your ears, so we're extending backwards, bring it into external rotation, keep it lifted, bring it back into flexion, and slowly down. Okay, again, just getting a little bit of relaxation in your body, let go of any tension. It's okay if you're holding tension in your body with those movements. They are designed for that, but you're trying to isolate the rest of your body while you're moving specific joints through their full range of motion. But now we want to kind of counteract that, get a little bit more into parasympathetic, a little more relaxed. And we're just going to do a few gentle movements here. So we're going to slowly lift the arms up towards the ceiling. Think of lifting your chest with it. And then as you come down, I want you to slide one leg behind you, and you're going into kind of a lunge position. Both feet still on the floor. And we're just going to take the arms up this way, going back into an arch, yoga-esque poses. And then slowly come back in, bringing that back leg with you, and we're going to bring it up into a balancing position. See that? Okay. I'm just going to hold that for 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and slowly bring it down. Same thing on the other side, reaching arms up to the side, lift the chest up. I'm going to bring the camera down for a sec so you can really see. And I'm going to slide that leg back, bending the front knee and holding that yogish pose. And then slowly bring that leg up. I'm going to hold that balance. Last 4, 3, 2, and bring it down. We're going to reach the arms up to the ceiling again. And let them just float down as if they were kind of heavy arms. As you bring your arms down, drop your chin to your chest. We're going to slowly do a roll down this from Pilates. And just go as far as feels comfortable for you. At the bottom, and just kind of let the arms go into circles. Slowly shake your head from side to side. Check in with your breathing. I'm going to take another inhale here. And a very slow exhale as you slowly roll back up. Arms up to the ceiling again. Deep breath in. And again, a slow exhale this time again, just letting your arms float back down to your sides, nice and heavy. Awesome. Just going to turn my camera again. You can take a seat again and just kind of check in with your breathing using those techniques. If you are noticing that it's very, heart rate is high, breathing is high, slow down your exhale. Awesome. I will post that thing about the heart rate and the routine of movement but I just wanted to go through a few concepts that you can use in terms of movement for the purpose of recovery. Awesome. Thanks so much, guys, and have a great Sunday. I will chat to you soon.